The evening air was heavy with the smell of rain that had yet to fall, and the cracked pavement of the narrow street gleamed faintly under the flickering orange of the street lamps. A tired single mother trudged along the sidewalk, her arms aching under the weight of 2 bulging grocery bags. The handles dug into her fingers, leaving red grooves in her skin, but she said nothing. Her son walked quietly beside her, a boy of 10 with wide, watchful eyes that missed nothing. He glanced up at her now and then, sensing the exhaustion in her uneven steps. From the far end of the block, 2 uniformed police officers emerged from the shadow of a shuttered shop, their voices carrying easily in the stillness. One of them was tall, with a smirk that never quite reached his eyes, the kind of expression that said he was already looking for someone to bother. The other was broader, heavier, and trailed a step behind, his hands casually resting on his belt as if he had all the authority in the world and no reason to hide it. The mother kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, silently hoping they would simply pass by. But the moment the officers noticed her, the tone of their conversation shifted. The tall one's smirk widened as he stepped directly into their path. Well, he drawled, glancing deliberately at the worn hem of her coat and the scuffed shoes on her son's feet. Out late, aren't we? No babysitter. Or maybe nobody wants to watch the kid. The mother's lips pressed together. Her son shifted closer to her side, his small hand brushing against hers for reassurance. She adjusted the grocery bags and tried to move around them, but the broad officer stepped sideways, blocking her way with the ease of someone who had done it before. Relax, the tall one said mockingly, raising his hands slightly as if she might accuse him of something. We're just concerned citizens. You know, making sure our streets are safe. Can't be too careful about who's wandering around at night. The broad officer chuckled, the sound low and mean. Especially people who look like they've got nothing better to do. His eyes flicked from her face to the bags in her hands. What's in there? Groceries. Or maybe you're hiding something else. She met his gaze for the briefest moment, her expression tight but controlled. Just food, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What was that? The tall one leaned closer, cupping a hand to his ear in mock confusion. Speak up. You don't want to sound like you've got something to hide, do you? Her son's chest rose and fell quickly. He could feel his mother's discomfort, see the way her shoulders tensed under the weight of not just the bags but the situation itself. She gave him the smallest shake of her head, a silent plea to stay calm, to not make things worse. The tall officer glanced down at the boy, his smirk turning cruel. You teach him to talk like that. Quiet, like he's guilty already. The boy's fingers clenched into fists at his sides, but he didn't answer. He just stared up at the man, his eyes defiant despite the knot of fear in his stomach. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The wind shifted, carrying the faint metallic scent of an oncoming storm. The mother tried again to move past them, her voice steady but strained. We just want to get home. But the officers only exchanged a glance, as if silently agreeing to prolong their amusement. The street around them felt suddenly smaller, the shadows deeper, as though the whole city had turned its gaze away. In that moment, the boy realized that no one else was coming to help. Not yet. The boy stood frozen beside his mother, his pulse thudding in his ears. The laughter of the officers felt louder than the distant rumble of thunder, each mocking. Word aimed at her cutting deeper than he could bear. He had seen her hold back tears before, at the kitchen table when the bills came, in the grocery store when she put something back on the shelf, but this was different. This was public, deliberate, and cruel. Her jaw was tight, her eyes fixed on the ground, but he could tell from the way her lips pressed into a thin line that she was swallowing words she wanted to say. His own hands trembled, the skin of his palms damp. He hated that feeling, being small, powerless. But then, in the back of his mind, a memory surfaced, a day months ago, when the mayor had visited his school to hand out winter coats. His mother had been there volunteering, and the mayor had spoken to her, thanked her for helping. At the end of that day, a city aide had given his mom a small printed card, just in case. She had tucked it into her bag and told him it was important. The boy's heart began to race for another reason. He remembered that the card had the mayor's phone number printed in bold. He had copied it into his notebook, just because he liked to remember things. And then, last week, when his old toy phone finally stopped working, his mom had let him have her older spare, an actual phone, though it could barely hold a charge. He had put the number in there too. The tall officer was saying something again, something about, people like you, not belonging in this neighborhood, but the words were already fading into a dull hum in the boy's head. His fingers moved slowly toward his pocket, where the phone rested. His movements were small, deliberate, as though he were trying not to disturb a wild animal that might bite if it noticed him. His thumb brushed the worn edge of the device. He glanced up. Both officers were still focused on his mother, circling her with words the way a predator circles prey. She stood still, almost statue-like, her knuckles white around the grocery bag handles. She hadn't noticed what he was doing. He slid the phone free and lowered his gaze, shielding the screen with his palm. The glow lit up his fingers as he scrolled through the short contact list until he found it. Mayor, office. The name looked strange there, so official, like it didn't belong in a child's phone. But right now, it felt like the only thing that mattered. His thumb hesitated over the call button. Would the mayor even remember them? Would anyone believe him? What if the call made things worse for his mom? The thought almost made him slip the phone back into his pocket, but then one of the officers chuckled again, and the sound pushed him past his doubt. He tapped the button. The ringing seemed impossibly loud in his ears, each tone stretching into forever. He turned slightly, angling his body away from the men so they wouldn't notice. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. On the third ring, a calm, deep voice answered, "This is the mayor speaking." The boy's breath caught. For a moment, he didn't know what to say, then the words tumbled out in a rush, his voice shaking but clear enough to carry urgency. He gave the mayor their street name, told him about the officers, told him they were making fun of his mom and wouldn't let them leave. There was a pause on the other end, but not a doubtful one, more like the kind of silence people take when they're deciding to act. When the mayor spoke again, his tone was no longer casual, it was sharp and steady. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." The boy's grip on the phone tightened, and for the first time that night, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't expected: hope. The boy's voice was unsteady, but every word he spoke into the phone carried the weight of desperation. He could feel the pressure in his chest as he tried to get the details out, what the officers were doing, how they were standing in their way, how his mother just wanted to go home. He spoke quickly, afraid the call might drop or the mayor might hang up before he finished. On the other end, the mayor's silence was sharp, deliberate, as though he was picturing the scene exactly as the boy described it. "You said you're on 5th and Alder." The mayor repeated, his voice suddenly low and firm. "Yes, sir," the boy whispered, glancing up to see the officers still circling his mother with their taunts, oblivious to the conversation happening just steps away. "They won't let her go. They keep saying things about her, bad things." His throat tightened, and he forced himself to swallow before continuing. "Please, can you help us?" The mayor's response came without hesitation. "Stay where you are. Don't move. I'll be there in minutes." The tone left no room for doubt. It wasn't just a promise, it was an order. The boy's mother had noticed by now. Her eyes narrowed in confusion as she saw her son holding the phone, his lips moving rapidly. She stepped toward him, instinctively reaching for the device. "Who are you talking to?" she asked, her voice low but urgent. He looked up at her, his face a mixture of fear and determination. "The mayor," he said simply, as if that explained everything. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment she just stared at him, almost forgetting the officers a few feet away. "What?" she whispered, unsure if she'd heard him right. Before she could question him further, the tall officer's head turned toward them. "Who's he calling?" he asked, his smirk thinning slightly. The boy's heart jumped, but the mayor's voice came through the phone again, calm but commanding, "Put me on speaker." The boy obeyed, pressing the button. The mayor's voice filled the air between them, startling the officers. "This is Mayor Harris. Who am I speaking to right now?" The tall officer blinked, his smirk faltering. Sir. You heard me," the mayor continued, his tone colder now. "Identify yourselves. Right now." The broad officer straightened slightly, his voice losing its earlier mockery. "Officer Turner, Precinct 9, sir." "And Officer Dale," the tall one muttered, his voice less sure than before. "Good," the mayor said, each word deliberate. "Stay exactly where you are. I'm on my way, and I expect to see both of you there when I arrive. If you leave before I get there, you'll regret it." A heavy silence followed. The officers glanced at each other, the playful arrogance that had dripped from their voices earlier replaced by a quiet stiffness. The tall one muttered something under his breath, but neither of them moved to block the mother or her son anymore. The mother stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Her son slipped the phone out of speaker mode and held it close again. "He's coming," the boy whispered to her, his voice trembling but laced with relief. The mayor's voice softened slightly when addressing the boy again. "You did the right thing, son. Stay put. Help is on the way." The call ended, and the boy tucked the phone back into his pocket, his small body still tense but no longer shaking with fear. Somewhere deep inside, he felt a shift, not just in the way he saw the officers, but in how he saw himself. For the first time that night, the balance of power didn't seem so one-sided. The air on the street felt different now, charged, tense, like the moment before lightning splits the sky. The officers no longer smirked or stepped into their path. Instead, they stood a short distance away, their eyes darting toward the corner every time headlights passed. The mother gripped her grocery bags tighter, still uncertain whether to believe her son's words. The mayor, coming here, it sounded impossible, but the boy's calm certainty kept her from moving. Then, far down the block, the deep growl of an engine broke the silence. A sleek black sedan rounded the corner, its headlights sweeping across the cracked pavement. Behind it came two more vehicles, dark SUVs with tinted windows. Their tires rolled slowly, deliberately, until the convoy stopped directly in front of them. The sudden appearance of such cars in this quiet street made everything seem to freeze. The first to step out was a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit, his presence commanding even before he spoke. His silver hair caught the glow of the street lamp, and his sharp eyes swept over the scene in an instant. The mother recognized him immediately from television appearances and news articles, the mayor, in the flesh. Her breath caught, and for a moment, she couldn't believe he had actually come. The mayor walked toward them with long, purposeful strides, flanked by two aides and a pair of city security officers. The officers who had been harassing the mother straightened instantly, their earlier bravado evaporating into something closer to unease. "Turner. Dale," the mayor said, his voice like steel wrapped in ice. He didn't shout, he didn't need to. "I believe you two have some explaining to do." Neither officer spoke at first. Turner cleared his throat, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Sir, we were just what?" The mayor cut him off, his eyes narrowing. "Just intimidating a woman walking home with her child. Just blocking her path when she tried to get by. Just humiliating a citizen who's done nothing wrong." Dale opened his mouth, but the mayor's raised hand silenced him. "Not another word," he said firmly. The boy stood close to his mother, his small hand gripping the hem of her coat. She looked down at him, her expression a mixture of disbelief and pride. He had brought this man here. The mayor's tone softened slightly as he turned to her. "Ma'am, I'm deeply sorry for what you've been put through tonight. This behavior is unacceptable, and it will be addressed immediately." She nodded, still struggling to find her voice. "Thank you," she managed, the words quiet but heartfelt. The mayor glanced back at the officers. "Report to my office first thing tomorrow morning. In uniform. Bring your badges." His words carried a weight that made even the broad-chested Dale shift uncomfortably. One of the city security officers stepped forward, positioning himself between the mother and the two policemen as if to create a physical barrier. The aides began taking notes, their pens scratching quickly against small pads. The street, moments ago suffocating with tension, began to feel open again. The mother realized she was breathing more freely, her shoulders no longer locked in place. Her son, still holding on to her coat, looked up at the mayor with wide eyes. The mayor caught his gaze and offered the faintest nod of acknowledgement, as though silently saying, "You did well." Then, without turning back to the two disgraced officers, he gestured for his aides to escort the mother and her son toward the waiting sedan. "Let's get you home safely," he said. And for the first time that night, the street felt like it belonged to them again. The next morning, the city woke to a storm, not the kind that came from the clouds, but one born from outrage. By sunrise, videos and photographs of the incident had spread like wildfire across social media. Grainy clips, recorded by a few nearby residents who had witnessed everything, showed the two officers blocking the mother's path, their mocking words clearly audible. Another clip captured the moment the black sedan pulled up and the mayor stepped out, his presence changing the entire atmosphere. Comments flooded in. Some people expressed shock, others anger, and many praised the boy for his courage. Headlines began to appear on local news sites. Mayor personally intervenes in street harassment case, 10-year-old calls mayor to save mother from police abuse. The story had momentum now, moving faster than anyone could control. By noon, the mayor stood at a podium in front of City Hall. The press had gathered, their cameras ready, the air filled with the hum of reporters speaking into microphones. To his left stood the mother, wearing the same coat from the night before, her posture a little straighter now. Beside her was her son, his small hand clasped in hers, looking both nervous and proud under the gaze of the crowd. Last night, the mayor began, his voice carrying over the sea of murmurs. A mother and her child were subjected to behavior that has no place in our city, especially from those sworn to protect. He let the words settle, the silence afterward thick with expectation. He turned slightly, gesturing to the mother and boy. This young man had the bravery to call for help when he saw his mother in distress. He did not call the police. He called me. And that says something about where trust stands in our community today. It also says something about the kind of person he is, someone who will not stand by in the face of injustice. A ripple of applause moved through the crowd, but the mayor's tone stayed firm. The officers involved have been placed on immediate suspension pending a full investigation. This administration will not tolerate abuse of authority. From this day forward, we are implementing new measures to ensure that all complaints against officers are addressed with urgency and transparency. The mother glanced down at her son, her eyes glistening. For months, she had carried the quiet weight of trying to survive without drawing attention to herself, but here she was, standing on the steps of City Hall, her story being told to everyone. After the mayor finished speaking, reporters surged forward, shouting questions. One crouched slightly to address the boy. "How did you know to call the mayor?" The boy hesitated, then said simply, "Because I remembered he told my mom once that he'd help if she ever needed it. And I thought, last night, we needed it." It was a short answer, but it made several people in the crowd smile. Even the mayor looked down at him with quiet pride. By evening, the story had been picked up by national outlets. Interviews were requested, offers of support came in from strangers, and the mother's phone buzzed with messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. But beyond the cameras and the headlines, in the small apartment they called home, the moment felt far more personal. As they sat down to dinner that night, just the two of them, the boy caught his mother watching him. "You were so brave," she said softly. "You didn't just help me, you made them listen." And for the first time, he didn't just feel like a kid. He felt like someone who had changed something.